Peace and blessings. Just chilling out in my garage. Not working on any cars or anything like that, but just took a walk through my neighborhood. It feels good to be able to walk through a quiet neighborhood and not have to worry about, just the elements of an urban environment that is typical of so many cities that I've walked through before. Now, I'm not really one that, I walk through, environments, so to speak. I've lived in the Bronx. I come from Youngstown, Ohio. I've taken walks through many cities where it's not as quiet as this place, where I'm walking past the thugs on the corners, the people who are posted up selling drugs or lurking. The loudness, the people bickering, just the elements of the city, the panhandlers, the litter, the graffiti, all sorts of things like that. I've walked through that, So, I know how to handle myself in the so-called hood, for lack of better terms. But nonetheless, that's nothing I want to deal with. It just feels good to be able to walk through a neighborhood where it's quiet, where there's no litter, where people, when they see you, they say hello. And, I'm not walking past any of that, I'm not walking past any, YNs on the corner, posted up. You see what I'm saying? People going up and down the street blasting music, sirens, and just things that are the effects or the manifestations of a low quality life, low quality of life, I should say, because you can have a high quality life in a place that has a low quality of life. You can split the hairs. There's lots of hairs to be split in life, but it just feels good to be able to, sit with my garage door open and my cars are unlocked, and, I don't go so far as to leave my home unlocked because stuff can happen anywhere, but if I happen to say, oh man, I left the door unlocked, it's not a big deal, It's not a place where people would meander off into your home, where the chances of that are that's likely anywhere. That's possible anywhere, but it's not likely here, in some places where the quality of life is higher. So just being in a place where the quality of life, the overall quality of life is high, is something that does good for the spirit, for the soul, for your, I don't know, just your demeanor and just, it feels good. So, I don't know, where do I go with that? So how does that happen? What makes one place better than another place? What makes the quality of life better in one place than another place? I got another chair here. This is the only chair I have. I'm gonna prop the phone up on another chair. But what does make the quality of life better in one place over another? Standards, motives, policies, of course. A lot of these places that have low quality of life, I think sometimes they're intentional. You know, you have to wonder that they're intentional. You have to wonder whether or not they're intentional. You know, because there are things that can be controlled, but they're not controlled, or they're left unchecked, or sometimes they're actually cultivated, where it's just like anyone with 2 brain cells would know that the quality of life is going to be bad as a result of those actions, those policies, those arrangements, you know. But some places, you know, Michael Shellenberger wrote a good book about this. It's called San Francisco, Why Progressives Ruin Cities. And it's a thick book. It's a thick, chunky read, you know. But I think it's a very on-point book that explains a lot of reasons why we see in particularly larger urban areas that are run by leftist governments, leftist ideologies, leftist policies, you know, manifest in the Democrat Party. It explains it, and it highlights, it goes deep with data and just methodology that explains it more than just ranting about it, you know. And I recommend that read to anyone that is really interested in understanding things with an intensity that is beyond just headlines or echo chamber type of thinking or rationale. I got the book in 2022 and refer to it often still. This is 2025. So, but quality of life, I mean, it's just something that's just, you know, it's weird. One time I was riding around in Detroit. This was back in like 2001, 2002. My brother lived up there. My father had myself, and then with another woman he was married to, he has my brother. And my brother, he was living in Detroit at the time, my father, when he had my brother, and my brother has always stayed there. He doesn't live there now, but he grew up there and well into his adult life, lived in Detroit. And I used to go up there all the time. My grandmother lived up there, family up there. And I was riding around with my brother and his friend, and we were just riding through the hood in the west side, like off Joy Road, somewhere between like Southfield and Southfield Freeway and like that area, you know, and up between like Chicago and Warren Road, or is it Warren Avenue? That area in Detroit. And his friend said something like, we were in the hood, it was summertime, people were out, you know, dudes on the corner drinking, you know, people walking around aimlessly, you know what I mean? Like, it was a typical hood scene, you know, litter, torn down houses, you know what I mean? Cars going up down the street, blasting the music, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what goes on in the hoods, you know? And he said, man, it ain't nothing like that black life, man. I love that black life. And even me at that time, as a so-called street guy, I never really considered myself like a street guy per se, but I was in the streets just doing things that would classify as street activity. But I never considered myself like a street dude, you feel me? I never really enjoyed being in that life. I've done activities that require one to be like in the streets, I guess you could say. Even though those activities can be done anywhere, but what I was doing, I mean, I was in that world, let's just say it like that. But I never was like, yeah, you know, this is what it is, you know, I'm representing or whatever, you know. But even at that, point in my life, even being involved or doing activities that would take me into the so-called street life and into the streets and being in that environment, I still was like, what's this guy talking about? You know what I mean? Like, why does he like this? Like, this is whack. Like, this is the hood. This is the ghetto. Like, look at little kids. They walking past litter and graffiti and people smoking blunts and drinking and cussing and just, you know what I'm saying? Like this hood environment, like this intense living, like shootings could occur at any time, you know. You know what I mean? Like old ladies, old men can't really walk the streets that, you know, without really feeling some level of apprehension. It's like, why do you like this? Why do you consider this black life? You know? But nonetheless, he said that, but it struck me. I was like, wow, you know. But I don't know. It's just like now we're at a point where, you know, in the fatigue phenomenon, you know, where people have, you know, so-called black fatigue or whatever. I think it's more so like hood behavior fatigue, but it's so sad that it is almost synonymous with black culture, black American culture. You know, now you find the culture, you find the similarities in, you know, some of the Caribbean nations. Like, you know, I go to Jamaica often, and there's crime and shooting and all types of debauchery down there too. But there's something different about it, you know. There's still like somewhat of an element of decency, somewhat of an element of, you know, conservativeness in the midst of it all. Whereas up here in America, it's more of a real culture. Now, one could listen to the dance hall, modern day dance hall, and be like, I don't know, man, this seems like, but I think that it's because they're so now intertwined and strung up with American black culture, being that it's been popularized in rap music, you know, Hollywood, that they see it as something that is affirmed, something that is validated, and, you know, it's more so like an intertwining. I think that's somewhat intentional, extrinsically, you know, by, you know, I could go on a spiritual level with it, but I'm just going to try to keep it down to earth. No, I'll go ahead and touch on the spiritual. I think that the spiritual forces that are instrumental in shaping that mindset, that behavior, that sort of inclination is going global, so to speak. You know, like look what's popular in America. Look what's popular in America. So to spread that culture that is somewhat synonymous and almost one and the same with quote unquote black culture in America is going global. It's like being imported. That's why you have like gangs like Crips and Bloods in places like Thailand or, you know, Sydney, Australia, or just these cities like, yo, what in the world? Like, they got Crips and Bloods in Lisbon, Portugal, you know what I mean? In Madrid, you know, it's just like, wow. Like, but anyway, to get back to the Americans, it's synonymous. It's one and the same. It's intertwined. It's almost, you know, it's like that is black culture, to be engaged in debauchery, high conflict individuals, full of bellicosity, you know, like this attitude with a chip on the shoulder, or just to engage in any type of behavior, finessing people, you know, getting over on folks. If you're able to get over on them, you know, financially or materially, you know, like that's what it is, you know. And it's verbalized in the hip hop music, and all too often in the entertainment, even in these so-called shows that are like, they try to give the black characters a hint of decency or family or cohesion or something. It's just like, it's always some type of dysfunction. Like they're always, even if it's the most, even if it's like something like Medea, you know, which usually, I guess, has some sort of like moral to the story, some type of like moral underpinning, some type of good moral in the story. There's always some sort of dysfunction, you know, whether it's like one particular character or a set of characters or a situation. Like even in Soul Food, you know, the movie Soul Food back in like, I don't know, like the late 90s, early 2000s, I think it was the late 90s. It's like somebody had to be getting out of jail. Somebody had to be on parole. You know, it's like, okay, man. It's like, you know, there was a great movie. I know I'm kind of like going at tangents, but there was an awesome movie. It's called Love Jack. It's one of my favorite movies. I saw it at the end of 2022. I'm not going to call it a black movie, but it just so happened that all the characters were black, okay? But in that movie, there wasn't even any cussing. There was no dysfunction. There was no sex scenes. You know, there was like one particular scene where the cousin of the main character is like a love story between, you know, two people, and the two people weren't quite together yet, but they were coming together. But there was like a cousin, and she tried to, like, you know, put herself onto the guy. Like she tried to, like, you know, but it was not a sex scene. She just jumped on him, and, you know, they were on the ground or whatever. But there was nothing explicit about it or anything like that. You know, no skin was shown, anything like that. But and the guy like got her off him, like, no, like I don't want you, you know. But that movie, there was no one that was getting out of jail. There was no one that was, you know, no one got killed. No one, you know, there was no big brawl out argument, cuss you out, high conflict, high intense drama like that. It was just people, you know. It was a great movie, funny. And the closest thing it got to anything criminal was that the guy, the main character, he was like a pool hustler, a pool hall hustler, you know. And he actually had a shred of decency because, you know, at the beginning of the movie, it starts out where they're hustling this guy, he and his partner, they're hustling this guy, and the guy that they're hustling, his wife shows up and she's pregnant. And the guy, the main character, he sees this and he's like, oh man, we about to hustle this dude and they about to have a baby, you know. And he kind of says, you know, he just looks at his partner and he's like, nah, man, let's not hustle him. But his partner is unscrupulous. He's like, nah, man, you play the game, you win the prize. You know, you hit. This is what I do, whether you got a mouth to feed or not, you know. But anyway, the guy, the main character, he misses the shot, or they take the shot. Actually, his partner takes the shot, but he goes and takes the money from his partner and goes and gives it back to the wife of the guy who they hustled. You know, so this guy is mad and he's coming after his friend, you know, his partner, and he goes after him through the movie. That's like a little side plot, little subplot of the movie. But the point is, it's a great movie because it doesn't, like, no one is there's no Ray who just got out of jail. There's no Pookie who is trying to get out the streets, knowing it's none of that. There's no shred of black drama, you feel me, that is portrayed in the movie. But I bring that up because everything now in black culture, it has to have some element of that, or some, now some wokeness. And I'm going at a different angle with this, but some level of wokeness or oppression has to be woven into it. Like, yeah, because they don't want us to have nothing. Because the white man don't want us to have nothing. Well, man, I'm a black man in America. You know how I'm going to get, how my cards are going to be dealt. It's like they play into that. That's woven into the plots and the stories. And it's just indicative of this culture that is one and the same with black America, so to speak. And I hate to use that term black America because it implies that there's like this monolith, like there's this just group that is all cohesive and one and the same all throughout the United States, from coast to coast, border to border, like a black person in Boston is the exact same as a black person in Phoenix, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't even have the same favorite sports teams. So to think that we're a monolith is absurd. Black America, the black community. What is the black community? What is any community? But what is, black America, the black community, the black church? Like, what is that? Like there's always some separate thing. Like, I mean, even now we got a so-called black national anthem before every football game, Like there's just this separate thing, and it's like it's deliberate, But there are elements and pieces and people in between who are not playing into that, like such as myself. Like, okay, I know good and well who I am. I'm black, I'm mixed or whatever, but you know what I'm saying? Like as far as I'm concerned, I'm a new American race. I'm a new race. I'm a mixture. I got, my father is black, like African slave descendants. We have Cherokee, who my great-great-grandmother was a Cherokee. You see what I'm saying? And on my mother's side, there's Italian. She's mostly Italian, and there's Irish and Dutch, okay? And probably some German in between in there. You see what I'm saying? But with all those mixtures, if you know how races, not racists, races, so-called races are formed, ethnicities, if you will, that they're formed through a mixture of people, So I don't ever deny blackness, so to speak, if I have to go there. But I know that I am a new race, technically, because of that mixture, and I call it American, like on American Dad when he used to sing in the theme song. Salute to the American race. I used to criticize. I'd be like, there's no such thing as an American race. But actually there is. There are, but it's so different. It's it's manifest in so many different things that there's no one, Like some Europeans are mixed. There's French mixed with some Germans. There's Italians mixed with Irish. There's, Jews mixed with Norwegian or whatever, like in America, it's truly a melting pot. And you could not point out and say that's the American race right there. Like you could go to Italy, or you could go to Yemen, or you could go to China and be like, okay, yeah, that's the Chinese race, so to speak. And even there, you can't really do it because that's a mixture of people. Like, yes, they may have the Asian phenotype, but they're something identifiable. With America, you can't really do that, because we have black people, we got white people, we got brown people, and when we have Asians who've been here for centuries or generations, you know what I'm saying? Yes, there are some Asians who've been here through the centuries, But we have the various natives, and those are not all the same race. You have the Sioux, you have the Iroquois. Of course, I know that for the most part, a lot of them are gone, or they've been blended in, and just like with the Tainos in Puerto Rico, you won't find any Puerto Rican that is more than 60% Taino. A full-blooded Taino, it's just not happening. You're just not going to find that. Okay, but my point is that in America there are so many different ones. So how I got there, I'm not really sure. I'm just going to tangents. I'm chilling on a Saturday, just enjoying the Sabbath and doing my best to keep it holy, avoiding work. I'm not a Jew, but I'm a Christian, and we have arisen out of Judaism. So the things that the Jews observe, Christians are to observe as well. Now, we may not observe like things of like the Exodus, because I'm not by blood a Jew, so I don't have that lineage. So I don't necessarily celebrate being brought out of Egypt, because I don't come from that lineage. But I'm not negating that or anything. I'm just trying to give an example. But the religious aspect, the theological aspects of Christianity are, in line with Judaism, because that's what we come from as far as our ritualistic things. And I know Christianity is not about ritual, but nonetheless, in the Ten Commandments, it says, remember the Sabbath and to keep it holy. So I do my best to do that. So anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and just wrap that up. But I guess the whole point of this was that I took a walk and I realized, it's not the first time that I've realized this, but I've taken walks in very nice neighborhoods before. And I've taken a walk in this neighborhood before. And I've been here 4 years, so I already know the quality of life here. But nonetheless, I took a walk, and that's what came to my mind to speak about, is that in this, I guess you could say, upper middle class neighborhood, this area void of any folly and debauchery and just the aspects of the urban life that you would see in, say, maybe like Albany, New York, or Philadelphia, or Detroit, or, the Bronx, or Cleveland. It just felt good. It feels good to walk down a quiet street, and the only noise you hear is maybe some kids playing in the yard, or some guy puttering around in his yard, or some dudes building a fence, or, you know what I'm saying? Like people taking care of their homes, doing things with their home, cutting their grass, the weeds, or whatever. Other than that, the ambient atmosphere is quiet and peaceful and tranquil. And I couldn't be happier that this is the quality of life where I dwell. Well, I guess I'll wrap it up here. May the Lord bless you.